All right, hacking your PlayStation 4 just got way easier. In fact, a few weeks ago, there was this new method that was released, and I gotta say, it's to the point now where hacking a PlayStation 4 takes a few minutes, and here's the best part for, I'm sure, many people who watch these videos, you don't have to open the system. It was really cool to see this recently with the Xbox 360, and now we're following suit with the PlayStation 4 and your PlayStation 4 Pro. In fact, things get even better because the big holdup for a lot of us comes down to the firmware that's on the PlayStation 4. Well, this recent hack actually works up to 12.02. In fact, if you've put your PlayStation 4 in a closet for like a year or two now waiting for some kind of breakthrough, this may be it. This is something I've been waiting for as well. Not only an easy way, but also one that would work with some of the firmware that I had on my system. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. We're going to start today with this video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Factor. Some days it feels like life is being played on fast forward, and all of a sudden you realize it's dinner time and you haven't even thought about what to make. That's where Factor comes in. Instead of reaching for fast food, you can get never frozen, high quality meals that are ready in just 2 minutes using only a microwave. I like to use Factor during the day when working on videos and filming since it's easy, quick, and cleanup is a breeze. Factor has recently expanded their menu in a big way, now offering more than 80 rotating weekly meals, meaning more variety, more flavor, and more options to fit your goals. I like to aim for higher protein meals, and Factor has no shortage there, with my favorite right now being the home-style turkey and gravy that comes with this spiced cranberry sauce that blends really well. They also offer all sorts of add-ons like breakfast, snacks, and smoothies. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code SpawnWave FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code SpawnWaveFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Keep the flavor while fueling your goals today with Factor. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring today's video. Okay, let's start with what you'll need. Obviously, a system. So a PS4, a PS4 Slim, or a PS4 Pro. Any of these options will work. I do have my Spider-Man PS4 Pro here. It's been sitting around for a bit and currently has firmware 12.0 on it. That's been out of the range for just being able to soft mod it and do this jailbreak and stuff. But now with this latest exploit, that being the lapse exploit, it supports firmware 9.00 to 12.02. So this falls right in the range for it, which is great. You also need a USB flash drive, and you'll need a Blu-ray disc that you can write to. And I know you're already thinking, I don't have a way to write a Blu-ray. And fortunately, if that's the case, the free market has kind of taken care of this because, well, people are burning these Blu-rays and then just putting them up on eBay for like 10 or 15 bucks. I happen to have a way to write to a blank Blu-ray, funny enough, from the Blu-ray drive that I bought to rip my PS3 games. I've been doing that for a bit now where I'm backing them up on my PC. And I just have a very large drive that I've just been slowly moving a lot of my PS3 games to. But when you know it, it also writes Blu-rays. That was just kind of a happy accident. I just happened to be here with a Blu-ray drive that can write despite getting it for ripping PS3 games. Anyway, the lapse exploit is very interesting as it is going through the Blu-ray drive itself to exploit the PS4 system. And once you burn the image, which is like 16 megabytes, so it's pretty quick, you move it over to the blank Blu-ray drive, you add a payload to the root of the USB, at which point you're good to go. So you turn your PS4 on. It needs to be connected to the internet if you've never run a Blu-ray movie before, because there is a key it has to download to then activate it here with that application. But once that's done, you pop the USB stick in with the payload. You then put the Blu-ray disc in and load it. Like that's actually it. And it takes a few seconds. It's pretty quick. The success rate from what I've noticed is probably about 70%. I've seen it fail a few times, but that seems to be pretty rare. And once everything just triggers here, it'll fire up Goldhen and then you're good to go. You back out of this Blu-ray menu, back to the main menu, and the thing's jailbroken. The nice thing here is it does move the payload from the USB to the hard drive that you have on your PS4. So after that initial run from the USB, you don't need it anymore to jailbreak the system and load Goldhen, which is good because Goldhen is not persistent. So when you turn the PS4 off completely, like actually turn it off, not put it in the rest mode, you will have to then rerun this Blu-ray. All right, so you have to kind of keep it around, but Goldhen does have the option to work in rest mode, so you can just kind of leave your PS4 in that state when you're done, and everything should still be there when you turn it back on. So along with the jailbreak here with the payload, I did put the Homebrew store on it, which would then just allow me to download things like items flows. There's an entire cheat menu application. There's a save game application, and that's mostly what I was looking for: the ability to dump my different games onto the hard drive, not needing the Blu-rays anymore for those games, and then also be able to do some interesting things for patches, say like 60 FPS patches, the ability to turn off certain graphical features, the ability to push certain resolutions, all in the effort of maybe getting a good frame rate out of games that were normally capped at 30. So let's talk about the process of dumping your Blu-ray game to the PS4, because unfortunately, it's not as straightforward as I would have liked. So you go into item flows with the game already installed on your PS4 and the disc inserted, at which point you can go to dump all. Now, before I did this, I decided to just go ahead and update the game, which item flows can do. See, you can still have your system connected to the internet. I don't recommend having your PlayStation account on here necessarily. I'm sure some people do it, but whenever I get into modding a system like this, really any, I always say, it's not worth going online and jeopardizing, say, your decade-old plus PlayStation account for this, especially if you have all these trophies done and purchases. To me, it's just not worth it. It can still go online to pull patches, official ones even, and even access things like the Homebrew store, but I wouldn't recommend then going online and playing games on there, okay? So anyway, with that said, you are able to download the official patches using items flow, and then you can dump everything, the information from the disk and the patch, to a USB flash drive. What happens is it takes the game, puts it into its playable state, and then starts ripping information from it, because these games are indeed encrypted, but not when the PS4 itself is playing the game. Okay, so then it pulls all this information to the USB flash drive, which does take time. But once you do that, you then go to a PC. You have to run it through a couple of programs to break encryption and create a fake package, at which point, for that and the patch, you can come back to the PS4, and then you install it like any other package file that you would from a USB flash drive. The game is there. It's even populated on your menu, and you no longer need the disc to play it. The reason I say it's a little more complicated than some other systems, like I'll say the 360 as an example, because with that, everything just happens on the system. You don't need a PC or a flash drive or something to then move it back and forth to break encryption or create some other package file. It all just happens right there. I don't know if the PS4 will get to that point. I'd like to think it could at someday, but at least for now, there's a little extra work to get it done. But once it is done and all that process is out of the way, it will function like you have the disc in the system going forward. And now this is kind of the fun part. Some things you can do with your Homebrew PS4 are kind of play around with these different games much more than you'd be able to otherwise. So you remember cheat codes? That used to be a thing back in the day. There's an entire application that allows you to patch games or just do all kinds of crazy, almost, it reminds me of a Game Shark kind of from back in the day. You'd put in a code and all of a sudden you have infinite health or infinite money or unlock everything. You can do that. And what's really cool, because it connects to the internet, it'll pull a lot of this information automatically. So you'll just have an entire database of different cheat codes that you activate by just pressing one button. And it looks kind of crazy, some of the stuff you can do here. And then even past that, they have patches that I was really interested in, where you can turn off graphical effects or turn on 60 FPS mode, as people realized, oh, there's a few lines of code in these different games that you change, at which point it'll unlock the frame rate. And well, with a PS4 Pro, I figured that's actually kind of interesting just to see what these games can run like without that frame rate limit. Oh, when I mentioned this save tool, what happens is you can go into this and you can find a bunch of different save files that are populated for games. And yeah, a lot of them include just 100% everything. So you can go into a game, immediately be at the end of it, 100%. You can turn on all these crazy cheat codes and see a game in a whole different light. And it's just kind of a fun thing to do. Again, back in the day, you'd play a game normally, you'd go through it, you'd beat it. But then you would go back and you'd put in all the cheat codes and do some craziness. So that's kind of what this reminds me of here. Just some fun, interesting stuff you can do with these different games using these applications. One example when it comes to the patches was the order. So this game took a while to rip. And when I looked at the file size, the number of files, it all made sense. It's like 30 something gigabytes and just a ton of stuff that it was pulling from that disk. But once I got it all situated, I went in and took a look at some of the different patches you can do for the graphical settings, and you can lift the frame rate, but then you can do things like remove the quote-unquote cinematic bars, you can change the resolution, whether it's 900p or 720p, and all of this leads to different kinds of frame rates, I'll say. I turned on some settings so you can see all the stuff that the system is doing. Another fun benefit of having it jailbroken, you can see how hard the CPU is working. You can see the memory for the RAM and then the VRAM allocation, and yes, the frame rate there at the bottom. And the order seems to either be 30 or 60. There's not much of a middle ground. And when I played around with the resolution and pumped everything up, the frame rate did struggle. But when I moved things down a bit there to 720p with cinematic bars, which is like 5 something p probably because only so much of the screen is being really rendered there, it ran a lot better. And the only drawback clearly is that it's kind of blurry. But hey, I mean, 60 FPS order, it's actually pretty awesome to see in motion. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Need for Speed Heat. There's a good reason why that game is capped at 30 on the PS4, even the PS4 Pro, because it's not doing much more than that. Again, I don't know if people would ever play around with resolutions or anything with this game, but it struggles even with the frame cap lifted, as in it does drop into the 20s quite frequently. Otherwise, though, you'll see it fluctuate anywhere from mid to upper 40s all the way down to like 22 frames. So it is a game that is all over the place. I tried to launch Sleeping Dogs, but I couldn't get it to run with the patch, the 60 FPS patch. It was kind of a shame. I'll look into this a bit more because I do like Sleeping Dogs. It is a fun game, and I was just more curious as to how something like this would run with the frame rate cap lifted. One that I was able to check out was Gravity Rush 2. That didn't have any issues running with the 60 FPS patch. But of course, one of the reasons I really wanted to jailbreak this system is to load PT back on it. And it's floating around out there online. It's easy to find. This is one I don't feel bad about downloading or anything because Konami legitimately just took it away. And it is such a unique and creative horror demo, I guess. I mean, you could almost look at it as an experience. It's not a full-fledged game, clearly, but it is something that you can get. Some people spend an hour or two in this demo just playing through it for the first time, and it is a genuinely interesting experience. Now, there are a lot of little patches for this, so I did try to lift the frame rate on it, and I also turned off some of the lighting and stuff to see if it would get closer to 60, and it did okay. It would drop to 30 pretty frequently, and that's the thing, is it fluctuates between 60 and 30, and it's like it's either 60 or it's either 30, and that's kind of it. That's where it sits. But as I was going through this, I just once again I got lost in PT again. It's just such a cool experience. I'm just going to say cool game because while it was supposed to lead into something else with Kojima and Konami, but unfortunately all that got completely broken up. It's still something that is so different from anything else, kind of in that horror genre, and it still has that same creepy, tension-filled effect and environment. And yeah, if you have a chance and you're able to jailbreak your PlayStation 4, you need to load this up. Okay, the file is online. It's 1.5 gigabytes. It's not a lot to move around. And once you get it installed, even if you just leave it with the patches off, it's just still such an interesting thing to see. So yes, I had to load it up and I ended up playing all the way through it once again, and it's still awesome. And there are still a number of other patches that you can do with the PS4 when it's jailbroken. People love to do the Bloodborne stuff, Drive Club and others, and yes, they all run pretty well, but I just wanted to try a few other weird ones, and I'm going to continue checking these out because it's just so interesting to see these games without some of the limitations in place from developers, and then also some of the stuff that the community is trying to work through here to get these games even running better on not only a base PS4, but clearly a PS4 Pro where you feel like there is more headroom. One last thing I wanted to mention here, I tried PS2 emulation because the way this is working is Sony has their own PS2 emulator that is compatible with the PS4 for PSN releases. And while it works with some, it's not necessarily designed for the entire library of PS2 games. So of course, I wanted to see what would happen if I just started wrapping a bunch of different ISOs in this emulator. So I tried things like Here Comes the Pain, and that didn't really work. It did some weird stuff with load screen and then just completely crashed. So unfortunate. Then I had Need for Speed Underground 2 that faked me out a bit because it looked like it was going to run fine, but then I got into the race and the thing was just slowed to a crawl and the audio sounded terrible. However, I did have good luck with Budokai 3. That ran beautifully here. No issues. Frame rate was super high, really smooth. And I was able to play Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Same deal there. No issues with the frame rate. It didn't crash. I had some weird graphical glitches where some of the textures in the background were turning pink, but otherwise it seemed to work. Now, I have the menu here and I didn't put any icons or anything, so it all kind of looks the same. That's something that I'd want to touch up with some of the games that I know work well. And at that point, you can have a nice little running flow of PS4 games, PS2 games, and even PS1 and PSP. Those are all also supported here. And if you want to go even further back, RetroArch is also supported. You can download that and play things like Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and more. But really cool stuff here. I'll leave a link down below to the GitHub that has laps. And you know what? This wasn't meant to be any kind of tutorial. So what I'll also do is leave a link down below to a tutorial that I was able to follow and do all of this without any issue. I mean, I was up and running with a jailbroken PS4 in like 10 or 15 minutes. They were very clear with how to do everything, so that'll also be down there in the description. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for, I guess, my first real look at the PlayStation 4 homebrew scene, which it's pretty cool what's been accomplished so far, and just the way that these homebrew scenes go. More and more stuff continues to get out there, especially ways of just being able to jailbreak the system, but also different applications and emulation and other things. I mean, now you can load just Linux onto the PlayStation 4. Like seriously, people are loading Steam onto their PlayStation 4 system and installing the Master Chief Collection or running Dolphin through the OS. So it's just about become a little mini PC now. Maybe that's something I'll look into a bit more in the future, but really cool to see this becoming more accessible by just popping in a Blu-ray. All of a sudden, you just have a jailbroken PlayStation 4, can do all kinds of cool stuff. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.